Have you guys seen just how much damage an absolutely Kraken level Sunind can put out? If you haven't, I have a treat for you in this video. One of the most well-geared Suninds that I have ever seen, just absolutely thrashing people. Let's get into it. Alright guys, as usual, we will start things off with a battle report. This battle is an absolute clash of the titans. I'll show you guys the gear here in a second. But first of all, huge thank you to IAMROB 20. He is on my server, so I'm able to pull these reports up directly in game. He gave me permission to use all of this in the video, so huge thank you and shout out to him for being able to provide me with this report in particular. He sent me a whole bunch of them, and most of them, I have to say, were completely one-sided wipes. This guy is a massive player and a super nice guy. I talked to him a lot on Discord recently. Great understanding of the game and really chill. A lot of times you talk to some of these like absolute massive Kraken players, they're not always super friendly. This guy, he was. So let's take a look at his gear here. Absolutely maxed out. This is like the best in slot gear probably that you can get for Sunind. He has the gigantic hammer with rend. He has the Ranger Shroud, fully refined of course, with resistance. He's also running a Hunter's Guide, fully refined with Aegis, so his army is always going to be stun and madness immune in those first 4 rounds, which is extremely important for a commander like Sunind. He's also running Desert Gauntlets, her unique item. This gives an extra +6 attack to the Arbalests. Really, for them, that's like +12 because they attack twice every single round. And really, it's way more than that because Sunind brings just an absolute ridiculous amount of bonus damage to her army. It's also adding +6 HP to evil men units, which you're always going to be running orcs and evil men on this commander, so it makes your evil men even more tanky. And it is yet another damage buff for your Morgul Arbalests. Really fantastic, unique item in my opinion. And don't worry, he has a fully refined pursuit accessory as well in case he knows that he's going to hit Gil or some other commander that's going to be relying on evasion. He can swap in the pursuit as necessary. And we'll take a look at Gandalf the White. This is actually Karkilli's Gandalf the White. This is the Gandalf the White that I made a video about. It's even better now. He's invested even more into it. I believe it's a Respect 21 Gandalf the White. He's a good friend of mine, so he also gave me permission to use this report as well. He is rocking Glamdring, Mithril Coat with Serenity, the Grey Wizard Hat with Tranquility, and a Smoking Pipe with Sustain. You can check out his skill build here. And he's been pretty much trying to build his Gandalf the White specifically to counter Sunind's because she has been running absolutely rampant in our current season. And most of the Suninds on our server, he crushes. Rob Sunind, not so much. As far as the skill build goes, you would definitely have to max out her Roderick Tactics. This says that orcs are going to gain +30% damage for each allied evil men unit type present. Well, if you run 2 evil men, that is a massive +60% damage bonus for your orc units. It's also giving those units some extra attack. You also can pick up Inspiration, which is for the first 3 rounds, you get even more damage. So I think you guys can put 2 and 2 together and see how her damage bonus, especially in the first 3 rounds, is just absolutely massive. Rob picks up 15 points into Sunland's Tactician, 7 points into Quicksand, which is quite a solid skill because this is going to have 2 enemy units take 20% extra damage. That's going to be on top of the already massive damage bonus that she's providing her own army. Now she's making her opponent's army, or at least 2 units of her opponent's army, take even more damage. Plus, there's a chance to stun those units each round. That's not really the important part of the skill. The important part is the fact that they're taking even more damage on top of all the damage they were already taking. Plus, he picks up 7 points into reserves. This is going to provide him with some amount of extra healing. and 15 points in Dagger Lad Tactics, which is going to cause his Evil Men units to be a bit more tanky. You're only going to be running one Orc unit, so this is only a damage received minus 15%. It's not going to be like Heraldric Tactics where you're running 2 Evil Men. That's going to make this double to 60. That's just going to be a 15% damage reduction. However, this does apply to all sources of damage. Focus damage, burn damage, physical damage, whatever it is, they're going to be taking less damage. And then as far as an army composition goes, this is a pretty basic setup here. He's running Halberdiers and Dragoons as his 2 Evil Men units, and then bringing the Arbalests. These guys are really what your army is based around because they're going to do so much damage. It is absolutely crazy. Rob did explain everything to me, and this is the report we're using, which happened to have Halberdiers. When possible, he does prefer to run the Hill Trolls over the Halberdiers, particularly in Tactics Evolved, because their elite skill causes them to take less damage anytime they are healed, which pairs extremely nicely with the reserve skill. The general idea for your army composition, kind of the most important key point to take away, is that you want your Evil Men units to be relatively tanky. That way, if you have to fight multiple battles back to back, hopefully at least after that first fight, you still have 2 Evil Men units present in order to give those Orc units the damage buff. What you really don't want happening on this commander is for you to take a fight, your Evil Men to be dead, and then you take another fight right away. Either it's just 2 super close back-to-back fights, or you haven't been able to reinforce yet, and only having either like 1 Evil Men or even 0 Evil Men units left alive, because then your Arbalests aren't going to get this crazy plus 60% damage. If all your Evil Men are dead, they're not going to be getting any of that plus 60% damage. So being able to pick those units, those Evil Men units specifically, that are able to last through multiple rounds of combat is very, very important because of Heraldric Tactics. All right, we'll wrap things up by talking about purple gear options for Sunind, because probably most of you are like me, and we could only ever dream of having a commander this whaled out. So if you're like most of us out there, what you'll probably want to look for is a Mirkwood bow with ranged might. However, if you can fully strengthen a gigantic hammer, that's probably still going to be better, especially if you get rend and you can get like at least 1 or 2 refines on the gigantic hammer. That's still going to probably be a better option than a fully upgraded and refined Mirkwood bow. In your chest slot, you're going to be wanting to look for a superior Halberd with melee vigor. This is because you really want those Evil Men melee units to be as tanky as possible. For the helm slot, if you don't have this absolutely crazy Hunter's Guide, you're probably going to want to use a Horseman's Helm with resolve, because you really don't want your army just completely blowing itself up in those early rounds of combat. You could also use a Trapper's Hood with Hysteria, but that's going to run the risk if you run into, let's say, an Isildur who's running Ring of Terror, or a Sauron, or even like a Frodo and Sam bomb. There are commanders out there that could just absolutely make you blow your army up in the early rounds. And then the very obvious choice, in my opinion, for the purple accessory slot would be a Wizard's Fireworks with Hunter's Mark. This is going to give you pursuit against all of those nasty avoidance, evasion commanders, whatever you want to call them. And it's also going to give you that ranged attack. So it's really a perfect item for her. By no means should you think that the Desert Gauntlets are in any way like a required item, like on Faramir, how you kind of have to have as unique for him to be viable. She will do fantastic, even with purple fireworks with Hunter's Mark. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.